Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm David Bowles, and today we're going to discuss a new fractional fiction book about the measured life I wrote called Standard Deviation. You have a number. Not your phone number, not your social security number, though that one matters more than most of us like to think about. I mean another number, one that follows you through databases you will never see, aggregated from purchases you barely remember making, from the length of time you hovered over a photograph before scrolling past, from the route you took to work last Tuesday, and whether you lingered outside that coffee shop or walked directly to the train. This number has a name in China. They call it a social credit score. But the American version has no single name because it has no single keeper. It lives distributed across credit bureaus and insurance actuaries, across hiring algorithms and rental application systems, across the predictive models that decide whether you see an advertisement for a luxury watch or a payday loan. You did not consent to being numbered, but you are numbered nonetheless. I want to talk today about how we arrived here. Because this is not an accident of technology. This is not the unintended consequence of innovations that got away from us. This is the completion of a philosophical project that began more than 500 years ago. And if we want to understand where we are, we need to trace the path that brought us to this place, where we are no longer the ones who measure, but the ones who are measured. Around 1490, Leonardo da Vinci drew a naked man standing inside a circle and a square. You know this image. You have seen it on coffee mugs and corporate logos and the sides of moving trucks. The Vitruvian Man has become so ubiquitous that we have forgotten what it actually depicts. Leonardo was not drawing an ideal. He was making an argument. The argument goes like this. The human body contains within itself the principles of geometric perfection. A man with his arms extended fits precisely within a circle centered on his navel. The same man with his legs together and arms at his sides fits precisely within a square centered on his groin. The human being is the measure of all things, not metaphorically, but literally. Our proportions encode the mathematics of the universe. This was revolutionary. For 1,000 years, European thought had located perfection outside humanity, in the divine, in the celestial spheres, in forms that existed beyond the material world. Leonardo proposed something radical. Perfection lives in us. We are not fallen creatures striving upward toward an unreachable ideal. We are the ideal, already complete, already containing within our bodies the ratios that govern creation. The man in the circle is not being measured. He is doing the measuring. His body is the ruler against which all other things will be compared. This matters. Remember this. The human as the origin point of measurement. The human as the standard from which deviation is calculated. 300 years later, an English philosopher named Jeremy Bentham designed a building that would change everything. Bentham called it the panopticon. The word comes from Greek, pan meaning all, opticon meaning seeing. The all-seeing place. The design was simple. Imagine a circular building with cells arranged around the perimeter. In the center stands a tower. From this tower, a single guard can see into every cell, but the cells are backlit, and the tower is shadowed. So the prisoners can never tell whether they are being watched at any given moment. This is the genius of the design The guard does not need to watch everyone all the time. The guard does not even need to be present. The mere possibility of observation produces compliance. The prisoners internalize the gaze. They begin to watch themselves. Bentham believed this would be humane. No more dungeons. No more chains. No more physical coercion. The architecture itself would produce reformation. The prisoner, knowing he might be seen, would learn to behave as though he were always seen. Eventually, the behavior would become habit, and the habit would become character. Notice what has shifted. In Leonardo's drawing, the human stands at the center. In Bentham's design, the human stands at the periphery. The center is occupied by the apparatus of observation. The human is no longer the one who sees, but the one who is seen. Bentham was not interested in the body's proportions. He was interested in the body's behavior. The panopticon does not ask whether a person fits within a circle or a square. It asks whether a person's actions conform to expected patterns. The deviation it tracks is not geometric but moral, not physical but behavioral. And the person being observed has no way to know what the expected pattern even is. The standards exist somewhere in that shadowed tower, applied by judges who remain invisible. Another 100 years. 1896, Chicago. William Jennings Bryan stands before the Democratic National Convention and delivers what will become known as the Cross of Gold speech. He is arguing against the gold standard, against the policy that ties American currency to a fixed quantity of precious metal. But listen to the language he uses. You shall not press down upon the brow of labor this crown of thorns. You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. Bryan understood something that the economists of his time refused to acknowledge. The gold standard was not a neutral technical mechanism. It was a system of measurement that advantaged some and destroyed others. Eastern bankers benefited from tight money. Western farmers were crushed by it. The crops they grew had value, real value, the value of food that kept people alive. But that value could not be expressed within a measurement system designed to protect the interests of those who already held gold. The gold standard measured. And in measuring, it judged. And in judging, it sacrificed. This is what Bryan saw. The abstraction that presents itself as objective, as scientific, as merely technical, always serves someone's interest. The question is never whether we will have a standard. The question is whose purposes that standard will serve, and who will be crucified upon it when they cannot conform. I have written a novel about these 3 moments and what they have become in our present day. It is called Standard Deviation. It is the 8th book in the fractional fiction series, which synthesizes public domain texts with contemporary research to create something that neither the original sources nor modern scholarship could produce alone. In this case, I have woven together Leonardo's Vitruvian Man, Bentham's Panopticon, and Bryan's Cross of Gold speech into a narrative about 5 people living inside a municipal scoring system. Their names are Sloane and Cassian and Tamsin and Bram and Isolde. Sloane designed the algorithm's fairness constraints, believing she was building a tool for equity. Cassian operates the surveillance infrastructure from a luxury tower, watching without being seen, while knowing that he, too, is watched. Tamsin, a former hospital administrator whose life collapsed during her husband's cancer treatment, discovers that her score of 412 has erased her from a housing wait list she waited on for nearly 3 years. Bram navigates the gig economy's algorithmic management while his newborn daughter inherits a score before she can speak her first word. Isolde championed the system on television and in council chambers, and must decide what to do when she discovers it operates differently than she claimed. These are not real people, but the systems they inhabit are real. The civic trust score in my novel functions according to principles that already govern credit ratings and insurance premiums and hiring decisions and parole recommendations. The tower where Cassian works resembles buildings that already exist in cities you have visited. The wait list from which Tamsin was deleted operates according to logic that already determines who receives housing assistance and who does not. I wrote this book because I needed to understand the arc that connects Leonardo's celebration of human proportion to our present condition of being proportioned by systems we did not design and cannot appeal. Here is what I have come to believe. The movement from Vitruvian Man to Panopticon to Cross of Gold to Civic Trust Score is not a corruption of measurement. It is the fulfillment of measurement's deepest logic. Once you establish that the world can be understood through quantification, you have already accepted that some things will be counted and other things will not. Once you build systems that track and compare, you have already created the categories of normal and deviant, of standard and deviation. Once you tie resources to scores, you have already decided that some people deserve and others do not. Leonardo believed the human body was sacred because it contained perfect ratios. But ratios require comparison. Comparison requires judgment. Judgment requires consequence. The cross of gold was always implicit in the Vitruvian circle. This does not mean measurement is evil. It means measurement is never innocent. Every tool for understanding is also a tool for sorting. Every system that helps us see is also a system that decides what is worth seeing. The question is not whether we will be measured. We will be measured. The question is whether we will understand what is happening to us, whether we will retain enough of ourselves to recognize when the numbers have become a cage. In my novel, the characters do not escape the scoring system. I want to be honest about that. There is no triumphant moment when they burn down the servers and walk free into an unmeasured future. That would be a fantasy, and fantasy is not what this book offers. What the characters discover is something smaller and more durable. They discover each other. They discover that the score is not the whole of what they are. They discover that even inside a system designed to reduce them to data points, they retain the capacity to see one another as more than numbers, to act in ways the algorithm cannot predict, to care about outcomes that no metric captures. This is not revolution. It is survival. It is the insistence on remaining human inside conditions designed to make humanity irrelevant. The final line of the novel is this: the measured kept walking. That was what they had. That was what remained. I do not know if that is enough, but I know it is true. We are measured, we are scored, we are sorted and predicted and judged by systems that see us only as patterns of behavior, as probabilities of default or illness or crime. And still we walk, still we choose, still we love people whose numbers tell us they are bad investments. Still we act in ways that make no sense to the actuaries. The Vitruvian Man stood at the center of his circle because Leonardo believed human beings were the measure of all things. The scored citizen stands at the periphery of a system that measures all things and finds human beings wanting. Between these two positions lies 500 years of philosophy and economics and architecture and computation. But here is what I want you to remember. The man in Leonardo's drawing is not defined by the circle that contains him. He is defined by the fact that he is standing, arms extended, looking outward. The geometry is secondary. The stance is primary. We can be surrounded by systems of measurement and still choose how we stand within them. We can be reduced to numbers and still recognize that the numbers are not the truth of who we are. We can live inside the panopticon and still refuse to internalize the gaze. This refusal is not sufficient. It will not dismantle the systems that sort us. It will not prevent the algorithms from running. But it is necessary. It is the beginning of anything that might deserve to be called resistance. The standard is a fiction. The deviation is real. We are the deviation. We have always been the deviation. And we keep walking. Standard Deviation is available now from David Bowles Books at bowlesbooks.com. You can find it in ebook and paperback wherever books are sold. It is the 8th novel in the fractional fiction series, and if you have read the others, you will recognize the method. If this is your first encounter with fractional fiction, welcome. The door is open. Come inside. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm David Bowles, wishing you a kind evening and a better tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Be a human meme.